Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for today's edition of the Sports Source. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you making it possible over these last 20 years to keep on air the only live 90-minute year-round Vols sports show in the state of Tennessee. So thank you very much. And we got a good one for you today. We've packed it full of, well, we got football because the Vols just wrapped up spring practice. We've got basketball because Rick Barnes' team just ended its best season ever and is already having to rebuild due to the transfer portal. We'll talk Lady Vols with the new coach. We'll talk baseball because we're going to have a live report from Lindsey Nelson Stadium when John Wilkerson joins us. How about we just get into this show since we got so much riding on it? First segment brought to you by our friends at Junk Be Gone. When spring arrives and it's time for spring cleaning, they are who you call. You can do the loading into a driveway dumpster yourself, or you can have their uniformed two-man teams do the loading for you. Either way, they haul it all away, and the stuff you don't need goes bye-bye. Junk Be Gone will be at my home soon. They always are in the spring. They'll be back there soon. I trust them. I think you should too. I think you'll be very happy with them. junkbegone.biz. All right, let's welcome in our panel for the day. Right here we have Will Overstreet, VFL, with us. Thanks for coming in to talk a little football and a little basketball, a little transfer portal. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Right over here, longtime media member. I almost said two guys from 99.1 The Sports Animal, but it's one guy formerly of 99.1 The Sports. Although you still pop up, you got a golf show.
He's our top fan. And a host.
There we go. We got Jimmy Himes right here. We got Vince Farrar, who people can hear every Monday through Friday in the morning on Sports Talk, along with John Wilkerson, who'll be joining us later. Thanks to you guys for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Vols put on a very quiet spring practice this year. They didn't let a lot of guys chat with the media. They didn't open up a whole lot of stuff for anybody to see. And I guess that's a good thing in that you don't have any drama. At the same time, there was no real buzz that came up about this spring. We talked about it last week. We'll talk a little bit more later and get your take on some of this. But with the offense, with the spring practice now behind us, the orange and white game yesterday, which usually those things look like a scrimmage. That looked more like a practice at times yesterday. I do want to talk about the offense in this segment. We'll talk about defense next. But where are you with the offense? You can talk to me about what you saw yesterday that stood out. You can just talk to me about overall big picture for the entire spring. Where are you, Jimmy Himes, with the offense at this point?
When I watch a spring game, I don't look at a lot of things other than the talent. Who can play, who can make plays. And so I came away impressed with a couple of Tennessee's newcomers at receiver. I like Chris Brazel, the transfer from Tulane. He caught 44 passes at Tulane. He's got really good speed. He can catch a deep ball. He's 6'6". He's got really good size. I like the five-star Mike Matthews that came from Georgia. Not only did he catch a touchdown pass, but on a flanker screen, he was the lead block that sprang the player that got the touchdown. So I like what I saw out of those two, and I was kind of I was attentive to Josh Heupel saying this is the most depth we've had in the wide receiver room. And I think one reason is those two. So I like what I saw out of them. The offensive line is still a work in progress, and that defensive line is pretty good anyway, so you knew they weren't going to run much.
And you had some guys that they didn't even put out there.
Yeah, that's right. So Dylan Sampson didn't have a carry. Yeah. So, but the thing I took away, I liked the two new receivers a lot. I thought the quarterbacks did well, and I was really impressed with Merklinger's mobility. Yeah. He's got some wheels on him, which you need to run this offense.
My only concern, not my only concern, but one of my biggest concerns is that fact right there. Who's your backup quarterback? Should something happen with Nico? I mean, we saw it happen two years. We saw Milton get hurt. Hendon Hooker took over. We saw Hooker get hurt. We saw Milton take over. Is Gaston Moore, he's a veteran. He knows the offense clearly. They keep him around. He's followed Josh Heupel. He's like a coach on the field out there. Does he have the talent level to get by if something happens to Nico? Is Merklinger, does the talent outweigh the inexperience if they need to put him there? I do wonder about the backup quarterback position. But in the transfer portal world, I think I would probably say that for every team in the SEC right now. Right. So that would be a concern. Your thoughts on the offense right now?
Yeah, I think I agree a lot with what Jimmy said. What you were looking for is who pops, right? Who shows up? Who do you see? It's easier to see that on offense. And so seeing those two wide receivers, Brazel and Matthews, that was a really good thing to see. I also noticed Merklinger's legs, being able to see that. But there were a couple plays in there that even they let the guys run, you could tell that, okay, full speed, that guy gets tackled right there. He gets hit. So the officials weren't necessarily short whistling at either times when you could have got a guy. So overall, you really looked at it and you said the offensive line was your big concern, which, that has been your big concern. It's still a concern going into this season of what happens with an injury at a certain spot. Center's one of those spots. What happens if you lose your guy there? You have to be concerned about that still to this day. With this Josh Heupel offense, I think it is. Last year was a little bit back. I think you're going to see a step forward with it this year. Yeah. But it still comes down to, as we've talked about on this show lots of times, the running game is so much more important. And if that offensive line's not there to do that, you don't have the horses back there to do that. You didn't see that yesterday, so that's what you're still looking for to find out coming forward.
Vince, part of that was on the offensive line. You were also getting a look at young running backs, and there's a lot of questions right now as to whether or not, with the Cam Selden injury and when he'll be back in the fall, at what point of the fall will he be back? There are a lot of questions as to whether or not Tennessee should go out and grab a running back in the portal. So I'll let you talk about your thoughts on the offense, but if you don't mind, hit a little bit on your thoughts on the running back and that specifically, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. The offensive line, there's guys missing, so it's hard to fully evaluate the whole running game and the offensive line because you don't have all those pieces together. Dylan Sampson is healthy in camp, had good camp, but they didn't play him. So you're really not getting a fair evaluation. I'm with you guys. You got to look at the individual players and then afterwards sort of piece it all together based on the info. I thought Khalifa Keith and Deshaun Bishop both had some hard runs where they broke some tackles. They weren't explosive. You want to see that explosiveness from that position. I think Sampson can bring that to you. But I don't think it's good enough for them to not address it in the portal. And I think Damian Martinez from Oregon State is and should be one of their biggest targets. He's going to be one of the top players in the portal overall. Yeah, he's an All-American running back.
It's going to cost you.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll see if Jermod McCoy, the corner from Oregon State, can help you out with that. And maybe, I don't know what kind of relationship he has with him, but maybe help tell him how good it is here on campus if the football part of it is big. But that would be huge for this offense.
If you bring in a running back that good and you spend that much money on him, is that an issue with Dylan Sampson? And is Dylan Sampson sitting there right now saying, I need all the carries? Or would he be happy to bring somebody else in who's going to get a chunk of carries? I think that's a question.
It's a fair question. It depends on what they feel about the other two guys because last year they really used three guys and maybe they focus on two and then there's enough work there plus in the passing game they can use them.
I don't think Heupel focuses on one running back in his career. As good as Wright was, he averaged less than 11 carries a game, right? So I think he does look for that depth. But to your point, I don't think Sampson's as worried about the carries as he is the cash.
Yeah.
If you're going to bring in
somebody else,
and pay him a lot of money, he's going to say, okay, where's mine?
Is that a deterrent? The fact that he doesn't have one lead guy, is that a deterrent for Martinez until he really hasn't had big running back in the portal? Or is that a positive because in the NFL they don't want a lot of tread on the tires? So maybe he looks at it as a positive.
You can look at it both ways. One, there's not a lot of tread on my tires. Two, I didn't get a chance to really show that I can be the workhorse guy.
He does have a lot of tape from Oregon State. That's pretty good, too.
At the end of the day, a guy like that transfer, it's going to be down to what's the money.
Right.
Right? Is it matched or is it not? And that's where he's going to go. That's why he's leaving where he's leaving. He's coming to get more money, and that it's free agency for
Which
him.
then gets you back to Jimmy's point, and that is if you bring somebody else in and give them more money than the money you're already giving to Dylan Sampson, if that's the case, what friction does that create in the locker room?
It's a hard walk. You're going to have conversations.
The conflicts, too, because they're being left out from the Pac-12. So the level of competition that he could prove himself in the SEC or somewhere else is different. So.
One thing that stood out to me yesterday, and we talked about it on this show last year, was there were a lot of times last year when we said, this coaching staff doesn't seem to trust Joe Milton to throw the ball over the middle of the field. Yesterday was a scrimmage, but the ball was going over the middle of the field yesterday. And I, as Will said, I have a feeling last year we're going to look back and say, oh, that was the glitch. That was the hiccup. And chunk of it was the processing speed of Joe Milton and the accuracy issues. Part of it was the receivers let him down at times. But I think we're going to move past that this year, and it's going to look more like last year, if you look through Josh Heupel's career, it was the outlier. everything else has been rather steady between these two markers. It's been here's your high, here's your low, and last year was here. Looking at that yesterday, seeing what we saw in the bowl game back in Orlando, I think that the passing game will get back to looking more like it did the first few years as opposed to what we saw last year.
Watch this stat. They will have an increase incredibly in yards after catch because Nico's going to be a much more accurate passer. He's going to hit him on the run, hit him in stride,
Yep.
and it's not going to be a 98-mile-an-hour bullet coming at you where, I caught it, and it knocked you down.
Or you're catching it back on your hip as opposed to out in front. Yeah.
So watch for that. I think that's going to be an important stat for this team.
Agreed. Anything? What's your confidence? Let me do this. 1 to 10. That's your scale. What's your confidence level on the offense coming out of spring?
As it sits right now, I'd say in the 8-9 range. I think it's really good.
Okay, 8-9. Where are you going?
8.
8.
8.
Okay, I was going to go 7, but we'll see. Because
So negative.
I am negative. I want to see Nico against SEC competition over the course of the season.
I just
him
think
against Iowa.
Heupel system after last year, it's going to take a step up. I just think that based on his consistency throughout the years and what you see in the quarterback, I think you're going to have better years.
I thought last year was like a 5, so I'm giving it 2 steps up. All right. All right. 7, 8, 9 for Vince. Very good. When we come back, let's talk about the Vol defense as we end spring practice. We'll do this same thing with the defense. We get Will's take on his whole unit, and a little later on, we got baseball, Lady Vols, you name it. Much more to come on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. Folks, are you thinking about turning a garage into an office or a finished room or a man cave? Are you thinking about redoing a bathroom, or you want to build a patio out in the backyard? Get with A.G. Hines Company first. They've got the materials you need. The best contractors in all of East Tennessee. All of Tennessee have been using them for a century now. But they've also got the tools you need, and they've got a century's worth of experience. So if you're sitting there and you're a do-it-yourselfer, it's like, I don't know if I'm 100% confident in this. Trust me, you get your stuff at A.G. Hines Company, you'll also get the tips and the experience that you need to help put that stuff together and do it right. aghines.com is where you can turn to learn more about this great business, family-owned business for 4 generations. That's insane. Right in downtown Knoxville, A.G. Hines Company. Okay, we talked offense. Now let's talk defense. And, of course, I'm going to start with Will Overstreet, former Vol defender. Will, your thoughts on where the defense is coming out of spring practice? We already talked in the last segment about the offensive line being kind of so that means by default we have to say, man, the defensive line looks great.
That's right. That's right. They couldn't run the ball at all.
That's right. Stuff them.
I just look at it this way. I mean, that defensive line has got a lot of guys coming back. Obviously, we saw what they did last year. I don't learn a lot from the spring to say, oh, wow, what is this defensive line going to be? I take that you did what I saw last year. A lot of those guys are coming back to play in the same group. Some of those guys are going to take a step up and be better. You've got a couple of new kind of people that you're bringing on that seem like they may have some speed rushing ability. So overall, I think the defensive line is solid. You've also got linebackers that did some good things last year. You've got some guys coming back from injury. And so you're putting together a more solid, experienced crew. So I go, okay. One part is what I hear yesterday about Nico. For the longest time there, he hadn't had an incomplete pass. I see a couple of those wide receivers go off on DB players, and I go, I don't know about our secondary. So that's where I come back to. I look at what I take from last year, I put that together, and then I go in the same spring game where I can look at the offensive line and go, still a concern. Secondary, I go, not looking good right there. I'm still very concerned about that. That still needs the work and the help from that side.
So it was a review of the game. All right. Let me ask you guys your thoughts on the defense and specifically the secondary, where Josh Heupel has said time and again that this is the most athletic group he has had in terms of his secondary room. Your thoughts, though, on what we saw yesterday and in the spring in general. Where are you with the defense, Jimmy?
I guess just because you're a good athlete doesn't mean you're a good defensive back. I did not like what I saw out of the secondary. Tennessee completed a 63-yard touchdown pass, a 71-yard touchdown pass, a 26 or 7-yard touchdown pass. I didn't think the defensive backs did a good job in coverage. I saw receivers running open. That's still a big concern.
Matthews was open by a mile.
Yeah.
I mean, that was...
And look, I get it's a work in progress, but my goodness, That to me is the biggest concern about this team, more so than the offensive line. The secondary to me is the biggest concern of this football team, and I didn't see anything Saturday that made me think, yeah, they're turning the corner.
It is the biggest question, and what happened with a lot of those touchdowns, it was different guys. You know, Jordan Matthews was covering Mike Matthews on his touchdown. You had Jordan Thomas, a safety, that was the closest to another receiver for a long touchdown. So it was different guys that were sort of the culprits of that. So if it was just the same guys over and over again, I would maybe have a higher alarm. But, you know, one play, those kind of things are going to happen. And I do think it's the biggest question mark. But I do think they also have more guys to choose from. Jermod McCoy. I do like Jordan Matthews. We'll see if he develops. McCoy, I think, has a great chance to start. And you know, overall, I think those guys have had a better camp. The game didn't look good in specific spots, but at least they have, to me, a little bit more SEC caliber physical traits than maybe they did last year, including the speed, which at times is an issue for them.
Let me ask you something. I want to take it. I know you had something to say, but let me get you on something else. James Pierce has been graded by Pro Football Focus as the best returning pass rusher in college football, and then they came out and they said that's not good enough. He's the best returning defensive player in America. Your thoughts on James Pierce being ranked the best defensive player in the country, returning defensive player in the country, and how much is that going to matter if you can't find somebody on the other side?
Yeah.
Because you're just going to double team him and that'll be that.
Yeah, it's an amazing compliment, obviously, and he put a lot out there to show that his ability to basically in the pass rushing game. Now, where I'd say he's got areas to work and improve is when they run the ball at him. And he's got some improvement he's got to be able to make there because, you know, that off tackle with a tight end on him, he's going to have to learn of how do I make some plays in the run game. But you're right. We got to develop the other side. You got to have somebody else. Otherwise, they're just going to roll away from him. You know, you just roll the pocket, send back to Chip James, and off we go. So you're going to need some other people to step up, and they should be able to step up because they're going to have a lot of attention on him. And so the other guy's going to be one-on-one. So if you can get somebody that can beat a one-on-one, you've got that ability there to offset.
And the reason I bring that up is if you have concerns about the secondary, and I think we all do, you may be able to alleviate that with a massive pass rush, which, again, Pierce has shown he's a great speed rusher. Do you have somebody else that can bring that kind of pressure?
I think the other thing I'd want to see the improvement in the secondary, who can come up and make a tackle. I mean, that's a big one, too. Like, maybe I'm not the greatest cover guy in the world. You know, I'm not going to be the interception guy. But if your guy catches it, I get him on the ground. If I'm up on the run, I come up and make a tackle. I don't cause these off-tackle plays to go for a lot longer, where in a couple of games this last year, that's where the momentum really went from.
I was going to say on the pass rush, and I don't know if the other guy could be Ross or Joseph or whoever it is, but one thing I do like, I think Tennessee's got pretty good pass rushers at tackle. Omar Norman-Lott had, I think, 6 sacks last year.
And he was very effective at Arizona State before transferring in, doing that same thing.
And Amari Thomas is not as good, but he's decent. So you can also have an inside pass rush, which I think can be effective with your overall pass rush.
Yeah, a lot of those veterans didn't even play in the game, you know, so it was hard to really label it there. No James Pierce Jr., no Keenan Peely, a lot of the veteran defensive linemen were there. I think those kind of things can help the secondary to some degree, but they do still need to be better.
1 to 10, your confidence level in the defense?
I would say 5 or 6, something like that. One thing I will say about the defensive line, Rodney Garner, I said this before, we didn't hear him yell as much in practice throughout camp, and we were right close to him, Jimmy. When we were watching him, I don't really hear him yelling and screaming at his guys. That's a positive, but I would say in the 5 or 6 range.
Jimmy?
I'm going to go around 7 because even as bad as the secondary was last year, they still ranked in the top 5 in the SEC in like 5 or 6 major categories. So I still think the defense can be pretty good even with the weak secondary.
Which is 2 years in a row they've done that.
Yeah.
What do you want to
I'm gonna do 7. I like you said, they have enough coming back in that defensive front to say that's going to be a dominant. So that what I think is teams are going to struggle to run against us. They're going to have to pass. We're going to get some pass rush. So it's just going to be, can you find 1 or 2 guys in that secondary step up? So I think 7's a good number for it.
I'm going 7 as well. I got 7 on defense, 7 on offense, but there's a little difference there because this program is driven by its offense.
Right.
So the offense needs to be better than 7. If the defense is a 7, I'm going to feel pretty good. Offense needs to be above 7 for me, and you guys think it will be. I'm just negative Nelly. All right, when we come back, Does the lack of buzz this spring mean that people are feeling real confident? I'm not talking about that. I saw Nico in the bowl game. We're going to win 10, 11 games this year. Or does it mean, I don't think we're going to be that good? We're going to give you a poll question next to see how many wins the Vols are going to get. And we're going to kind of do a catch-all here in this segment about anything else we didn't touch on with spring practice. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Elkmont Station. If you're looking for a real variety on the menu and a real quality with every order, check out Elkmont Station off Campbell Station Road out in West Knoxville. Great food, great drinks. Try the shrimp and grits, folks. If you like shrimp and grits, this is as good a variation as you'll find 5 hours from Charleston. I think Charleston is tops. This is the closest I've ever seen to top-notch shrimp and grits here in East Tennessee. Elkmont Station Knox to learn more. Elkmont Station, crafty food and drink. All right, it's time to get you involved with our poll question for today. If we can go ahead and put that up, I want to know how many regular season games will Tennessee win this fall? All right, you got 4 options, 7 or fewer for the negative folks, exactly 8, exactly 9, or for the positive folks, we got 10 or more. So what we want you to do is take your smartphone, aim it at that QR code, play along with us, let us know what your take is on Tennessee's win total. We'll do this, here's the thing. I finally got a way to test this. So we're going to do this every month or so, and you're going to see that number of 10-plus wins climb by month.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So, we'll see. You can prove me wrong. Yeah. But go ahead, play along. Tell us whether you think it's going to be 10 or more, exactly 9, exactly 8, or 7 or fewer. And if you want to just do it the old-fashioned way, you can go to sportsource.tv/polls. Just click the polls button. It'll take you right to this poll. All right. Perfect question for today's segment. And it's almost like I planned that, which is rare for the show. Here's what I want to know. It has been quiet over there. We've talked about it a little last week. I want to know, do you think fans and media are not talking about it because, well, we've already seen Nico? I think it would have been more buzz if Nico hadn't played in that bowl game. Mm-hmm. But since he played, I think you may have people saying, oh, they're going to be fine, kind of like we did. Is that one of the reasons there's not as much buzz, because people saw the bowl game and went, okay, it'll be back to normal with him, we're fine? Or could it be that people are like, oh boy, I don't know, I don't like what I'm seeing this year? Is it overconfidence? Is it underconfidence? Why the lack of buzz?
I think the bowl game had a lot to do with it. You went against a defense, allegedly a top 5 defense.
Had been before you.
Yeah, and and of course they set some players out too. But Nico played very well. He accounted for 4 touchdowns. He didn't have great numbers passing, but he also ran the ball. He made quick decisions. He did a lot of the things the previous quarterback didn't do. And I think that is what's engendered so much confidence in what he'll do. Plus the fact that he's got something beside his name, 5 stars.
Yeah.
So I think that's a part of it too.
So the lack of buzz is more of, we got this.
I think so.
Okay.
I do too. I think there's an expectation or level set now with Josh Heupel's offense and ability at this point that I think it just thinks, hey, we're going to baseline is here. And then, people thinking maybe over for performance. But I think right now you're in the little bit of a lull coming off of basketball season, and it's been really good stuff that just maybe the news hadn't been out as much, but let this build over the summer. I'm sure we'll see where this confidence level exists.
Already we're over 70% in terms of people saying 9 or more wins, so it's pretty positive. What do you got, Vince?
Yeah, overconfidence is out of those choices where I would go. Overconfidence would also lead to insinuating that they're, giving them too much credit, that they're not going to be that good. I don't know that it's unrealistic in fans thinking about potentially a college football playoff with it being expanded. So, yes, I think it's because of Nico. I also think what you said, John, that last year was an outlier. With Joe Milton at quarterback, with not having the stars of receivers. I think they're taking all that and some trust in Heupel. But it centers around Nico. When you talk to people not on broadcast or social media, they have confidence in this Tennessee team. At least that's my experience. Yeah. So I do think it's on that positive side. I
think there's a reason to be confident in Nico, but I still look at it and go, my first year starting a full year next year. Mm-hmm. And so I still go, there are going to be some bumps and bruises along the way. So saying, is he going to be great? I could see that and say, hey, I have probably confidence, high-level confidence of that. Saying, is he going to be what everybody amounts him to be already next year? That's my problem.
Look, Peyton Manning turned out to be everything he was hyped up to be when he got here.
Right.
But he wasn't the Peyton Manning senior when he was Peyton Manning freshman. He was still good, but he got better as a sophomore, better as a junior. But so I think Nico's going to get there. I'm like you in terms of I think he'll be fine. I think the offense will step back to normal. I just don't think he's going to be firing on all cylinders, especially early in the year. I think that people are just taking the NC State game and even the road game at Oklahoma. I've had so many people, well, Oklahoma's going to suck. Like, it's a road game with a new quarterback the first time around. I don't know about that. So I think it could look rougher early, and he'll start to hit his stride the more he gets games under his belt.
He will also be more efficient, and you've kind of touched on this, if the run game is there. If the offensive line performs at a level that allows the run game. Look, they averaged a little over 200 yards rushing last year. I don't expect that this year, but if they can get to the 180 range per game, that's going to help make Nico's job easier. And I think also Matthews and Brazil will also help make his job easier.
Final word very quickly.
Look at the top quarterbacks in college football in recent years. They're all veterans. So yes, Nico, there's the confidence that he's going to get to that level, but they do it more as veterans, so there's still a progression there.
All right, very good. We got a lot more to cover, including when we come back. It was just the end of the greatest basketball season in UT history, and you're already talking about a rebuild. We'll talk about the transfer portal and what's happening with Rick Barnes' roster, who's coming in. We'll show you an interesting comparison between the shooting numbers of the three guys they're targeting versus guys last year. All that's next on the Sports Source. Go back. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Spring is here, folks, which means it's time to protect your home from termites and carpenter bees. Both those little devils, they like to get into your home and eat the wood. And that's not good for a home. You like to have the wood uneaten. So if you want to take care of your home, you need to call Southeast Termite and Pest Control. I use them. You should too. SoutheastTermite.com tells you all the stuff that they've done. And let me tell you, they've been around since 1971. Another locally owned, family owned, proven business like, gosh, just about everything on this show. SoutheastTermite.com. Really like those folks. I know you will too. All right, take a look here. This is the roster. You got 7 players right now on scholarship. 7. You have 6 openings because graduating, you had Josiah Jordan James, Dalton Connect, Santiago Vescovi in terms of those scholarship guys. In the portal now, Jonas Adu, Tobey Awaka, DJ Jefferson all went this week. Freddie DeLeon went last week, so 6 openings. Your front court's looking a little vacant there. Big things needed from J.P. Estrella and Cade Phillips. Let me start with you, Jimmy. Are you part of the group that saw the Awaka, Adu, and Jefferson departures? And we talked about Jefferson last week, whether that was going to be. If you don't play for 2 years, I don't think that's a shock. But were you part of the group that was shocked and surprised that you're having this many people in the portal? Or are you part of the group that's like, look at the portal? Teams are losing them all over the place. It's just people going out to the highest bidder. Where are you?
I'm mildly surprised because I expected some transfers, right? I didn't expect Adu and Awaka. So that one was what caught me off guard a little bit, was those 2. But to have 3 of them in there in the portal, not surprised at all. Don't know all the reasons either. I don't know if it's all money. Maybe with Awaka it's playing time. Who knows? But only mildly surprised because you do anticipate this every year. But to lose 2 guys inside like Awaka and Adu, that caught me off guard.
Same. I was a little bit surprised by Adu, and Awaka a little bit, but you could kind of understand that he was viewing it at the time of Adu being in front of him if it was about playing time. The other guards, I was not surprised. But, yeah, when you step back and take a look at the big picture, this is happening. And people are probably in Adu's ear saying, in the transfer portal, that's when you can get more money, more so than existing players for your school. And a big man, those are coveted too. So if NIL was a driving force, I could understand that. But also there's a possibility, what if Awaka left because of playing time, does he come back? With Adu's decision. Yeah,
well, see, that's the interesting. That's what surprised me. I was more surprised by the Awaka decision in hindsight because you would think that Adu and Awaka had some conversation. Now, maybe they didn't, but you would think that 2 teammates would talk about who's staying, who's going. And if Awaka knew Adu was going to go, well, I'll just sit here and get my playing time. But maybe it is all just a play for cash. I mean, Jalen Wright made one of those kind of plays last year before the football season, got the NIL he was looking for, and it all worked out for Jalen Wright. We're talking money, so Will looks over. Your thoughts on how quickly I got a question for you in the next segment that I want to ask, but your thoughts on how quickly a roster, especially in it's one thing in football where you can lose a lot of guys. Basketball, you're talking about 10 minutes, you're talking about 7, 8 guys in a rotation. You can lose a whole team like that. That can't be good in a locker room.
It's not going to be good in the locker room just because you sit there and you're always wondering who you're going to play with next. It's almost like an AAU team, really and truly, right? Like it's just showing up one summer to the next. Who's going to be on the team, who's going to be on the roster. So it makes it difficult to play as a team and to really figure it out and of, how are we going to take the next step the next season where normally you'd go, okay, well, this guy's there. He's going to get a little bit better and we'll get there. But, yeah, it makes it every year kind of a new challenge. It'd be difficult to be a coach or be anybody kind of in this group right now because it seems like it's not going to slow down. You don't have long-term contracts. So you can't be secure about any one person being on that team for any longer than
Arkansas
one season.
has 0 scholarship players with John Calipari, which is
I think he'll be okay, though.
I do. But McMahon, when he went to LSU, at one point had 0 scholarship players at LSU, and he had to rebuild it.
That's just not good for the sport, which we'll talk about next. But I do want to show you some stuff about the targets that Tennessee is after. All right, Darlinston Dubar. Is it pronounced Dubar? Does anybody know, or is it Dubber? I'm guessing it's Dubar. So if it's Dubber, my apologies, sir. He's coming from Hofstra, Tennessee. After him, he's already been into town. 17.8 points per game last year, almost 7 rebounds per game, 39.9% from 3 last year. Igor Milicic from Charlotte, a Croatian, 6'10", 225, 13 points a game, 8.5 boards per game, 37% from 3. That's kind of, you're looking in an NBA kind of big man at that point where you can also shoot it from outside. And then Cade Tyson, now look, North Carolina's after him. So you're going head-to-head with Carolina and their NIL dollars. But kid from Belmont, 6'7" wing, 16 points a game, 6 rebounds last year, 46.5% from 3 last year. That'll get you some NIL dollars. But let me show you something on their shooting. Let's take a look at this. All right, now look, what you've got here, this is a little chart that shows usage. That's basically field goal attempts, all right? At the bottom, there are only 3 guys at Tennessee who played enough minutes, 329, and got enough field goal attempts, at least 223, to make this list. Dalton Knecht, Zakai Ziegler, Josiah Jordan-James. You want to be, the more you're used, the more it's toward the right. So you see all those shots for Knecht. He's way over there to the right. Up and down, that's your effective field goal percentage, which takes into account the 3-point and the 2, and the weight of the 3. But up there at the top, there you see Darlinston Dubar. You see Cade Thompson. You see Milicic. All 3 of those guys are better shooters than anybody you had on your team last year. Now, if you're wondering, Dubar is the better defensive player, Milicic is the better rebounder, and Tyson, like I said, pure shooter, decent ball handler. It would be great if Tennessee could get a couple of those guys. Right now, they're after at least one of them. Very quickly, thoughts on Rick Barnes having to rebuild this roster at his age. I just can't imagine he continues to want to do this. He and Tom Izzo are the 2 that shocked me. Are still in this.
Yeah, maybe Tyson, his favorite player is Kevin Durant.
There you
so
go.
Maybe you can lure him in with that kind of connection. But that's what you got to do. You got to go out and find portal and get players to fit your needs, which can be a challenge. Now, Tennessee didn't know Knecht was going to be that good, right?
Right, sure.
So it's going to be hard to hit a home run like that again.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, let's talk more about the portal and what it's doing to college sports. Would Will Overstreet have finished up at Tennessee if he'd have been able to put himself out to the highest bidder every offseason for 5 straight years if it'd taken him 5 years to graduate? We'll discuss that, and then we got Lady Vols, we got baseball, and much more to come. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. Think about the summer, folks. Think summer. G3 boats and G3 Suncatcher pontoons are offering instant rebates up to $6,000 on all in-stock inventory purchased between today and May 12th. You got a month. $6,000 in instant rebates. That's just nuts on some of the best boats on the water. G3 Suncatcher pontoons. Madisonville Marine. There's no better place to buy a boat, especially if you're looking for $6,000 in instant rebates. Highway 411 North in Madisonville, madmarine.com. All right, let's remind folks of the poll. If we could pop that thing up there. I know we haven't had it in a lot, but let us know how many regular season games will Tennessee win this fall. And it's still looking like, oh gosh, we're up to 80% now are saying exactly 9 or 10 or more. So we got 80% of the people thinking it's going to be at least 9. Not only 22% or 21% down there in the negative range. So come on, negative people. Make it interesting. Take out your phone. All right. Will, I want to start with you very quickly. We got to catch up here, but this transfer portal stuff. We asked Sterling Hinton, during the season, if you'd had this opportunity, if they cleared it off to where, you could go get the most money, NIL's available, and now there's no transfer limit. That was the court cases. It looks like the NCAA is just going to yield and say, okay, no transfer limits. You can transfer 5 times if it takes you 5 years to graduate. If you'd been at UT, and as I say that, Sterling said he would have gone, which that's Mr. Orange Blood.
Yeah, I know.
What about you? You're more green-blooded. If money had been available, would you have put yourself out on the open market once or twice or 5 times?
At the very least, you would have had to just to make UT match. I mean, you know what I'm saying? In a capitalism world like this, you'd have to be like, hey, what can I go get on the market to go make UT go? I've been offered $1 million, let's say, and just go, what are you guys willing to do? And see, like, are you going to go to 750 and do I stay and take 250 cut, or do I go and move on? But I think you would have had to have done that. I don't think there's any doubt that as a player, when you got this time, you got this opportunity, you're going to maximize the financial return that you can possibly get. Now, does it mean I would leave if there was a difference? If it was reasonably close, I think you could consider staying. But if you're saying UT's offering me $200,000, somebody's offering $1 million, I'd have a hard time knowing if my kid was that situation, saying stay for the $200,000 when you can go make that. So it's a definitely different, much more closely related to the NFL, where you're going, I play for the Falcons, but if Tampa offers me $5 million more, I'm wearing the Buccaneers jersey in the next week.
Gotcha.
So it's got to be closer to that now.
Well, and I'm going to have to be quick, so I'm not going to let you guys get into this. I'm sorry. This is when we have John Wilkerson joining us from the stadium. I got to be on time with him, so that's coming up. But I do want to say this: people always complain about the NCAA and the rules, and I'm one that thought that the transfer rules are too stodgy. It's heartless at times. This is what happens though when you don't have rules. You have less turnover in the pros, because the whole team isn't a free agent every offseason. Fans are going to see, college fans are going to be less stable with their teams than the pro teams are. I don't think that's good for the sport, and it's one of the reasons we have speed limits in this world. It's one of the reasons we have property boundaries. All rules aren't bad, okay? Sometimes the NCAA served a purpose. I didn't like the NCAA. It's not perfect, but all the people are like, get rid of it. This is why you don't just get rid of it, because it just becomes the Wild West. And we're seeing it in NIL. We're seeing it with transfer portal. I don't know what it means for the future of college sports, but I don't think it's going in the right direction as it is right now. All right, we got to catch a break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about, coaching search. I don't know if you kept up with what was going on in Lexington, but we're going to let you have a little fun with that. Then we got John Wilkerson from baseball. Then we got some Lady Vols. Then we got the money Tennessee spending on basketball in general. We got a lot to cover. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. Spring in East Tennessee means stormy weather, so don't fall victim to a bad break from Mother Nature. If your neighborhood gets hit with high winds, hail, or heavy rain, get a free roof inspection from Daniel Hood Roofing. They want to put a new roof on your home, and they want your insurance company to pay for it. Daniel Hood Roofing, danielhoodroofing.com. All right, this week, John Calipari, the rumors started that he was talking to Arkansas, and Kentucky fans rejoiced. We had a whole thing, I just don't have time for it, but we had a whole thing of tweets from people saying, all right, bring on Billy Donovan, Danny Hurley, Jay Wright, Nate Oates, we can get Scott Drew, we'll get any of them. And it was just down the line, Cal sucks, we get a new guy, it'll be better. By the end of the week, when they wind up with Mark Pope, who has never won a tournament game and was coaching at BYU, but he's a Kentucky alum, which we talked about hiring alums last week on this show. The mood in Kentucky changed. People weren't real happy. I'm sure he did his press conference and that turned it around, but they were not thrilled with the hire. The reason I bring it up is not just to laugh at our Kentucky viewers, and we have quite a few every year. Thank you for watching. It's not just to laugh at you. It's to kind of deliver a lesson. Tennessee fans should be paying attention to this. Fans everywhere should be paying attention to this kind of thing. It says Kentucky on the jersey. They rumored to have taken a package 8 years, more than $100 million, would have made Danny Hurley the #1 coach in all of college sports, more than football anywhere. And they still got a bunch of no's. Billy Donovan, who is their John Gruden. He is to Kentucky basketball as John Gruden is to Tennessee football. He's the white whale. He said no. These guys, it's the name. And they had the money, and people still said no. Sometimes it takes some luck. Like Rick Barnes being fired when you need a coach. That was an incredibly lucky spot for Tennessee. Kentucky happy to get Calipari out of there. Arkansas thrilled to get him. Well, how did they get him? Kentucky was running him off, and he was happy to take a pay cut. Jimmy, Vince, a lot of people don't realize how much luck is involved in these things. It's not a matter of, well, just spend. People offer money all the time. Somebody's got to be willing to take it, and that's not as easy as it looks.
No, it's not. I remember when Tennessee at one point was offering Mike Gundy over $6 million a year at Oklahoma State. He stayed. There was a package that a board of trustees told me they offered Gruden. At the time, this was big money, $30 million over 5 years. That's not going cheap. And obviously,
Yeah, at the time, now that would be. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's at least 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it is hard, and you got to be fortunate. And then sometimes when you hire that big name, it still doesn't work out.
Well, Lincoln Riley at USC hasn't been a success yet. Brett Bielema was not a success at Arkansas. Won a bunch of Rose Bowls at Wisconsin. Brian Kelly, all right, jury's still out. Everybody keeps saying this is the year. We'll see. Vince, your thoughts on the lesson that can be learned from this Kentucky search, or do you just cackle at Kentucky?
No, well, careful what you wish for, I think is the point of it. And I agree with that. And especially, money doesn't always bring you the hire, especially with what those coaches have to deal with today in college athletics, whether it's football, whether it's basketball. They want to know, hey, how invested are you in NIL? You know, how aggressive we're going to be with facility. So there's a lot more to consider in addition to just the salary of it. And I agree. It a lot of times it does come down to luck.
Well, when you look at coaching changes, football or basketball, you can offer the moon and somebody not take it just because of the position or whatever's happened before, who they're having to follow. I mean, Alabama football, there were a lot of coaches that said no in terms of just immediately came out and said, I'm not interested, whether they went to them or not. The Steve Sarkisian said, I'm happy at Texas. You had guys that said, no thanks. That's Alabama football. Now, they wound up getting Kalen DeBoer, but he's not exactly, he's had a short, good run at this level.
Yeah, we'll see.
When you look at a fan base, though, they at least want to see that you're trying, though. If you wind up with a fallback coach, but you tried to get the big guy, that's different than just going straight to the secondary name.
Yeah, some of it's marketing, right? Marketing what you did to go after somebody.
Yes.
That's what they're doing because they know this guy's going to reject us. I'm sure Donovan, right? They knew he was not going to take this. He probably had openly said it 1,000 times. So I think they're just marketing at that point. And so, yeah, it's out that. But you got to remember, people used to be going from hundreds of thousands or low millions to multi-millions. Now you're going from a guy that's making $7 million, $6 million, and you're going, we'll pay you $8 or $9. Okay, is the $3 million worth the pressure?
Exactly.
I don't know. But when I'm making that money, the big number is not exactly as enticing as it used to be.
Absolutely, and especially as you say, if you're going to walk in there and inherit, if you're looking at walking into that Kentucky job, you're looking at, okay, so you guys ran off Calipari, who went to 4 Final Fours and won a national championship. I realize he hadn't had the great success since COVID, but I don't know that fits for me. I don't know that I want that kind of pressure. Let me ask you guys this very quickly. Got a minute, and I'll let each of you get 30 seconds. Is the Kentucky basketball job as good as people in Kentucky think it is?
I think it is, but I also think it's a job that's hard to maintain for 10 or 12 years. I remember Eric Parsegian, when he was at Notre Dame, said it's a 10-year job. Too much pressure at Notre Dame.
Calipari said the same thing when he took the Kentucky job a little afterwards. Yeah.
So I think it's a great job, but I also think there's almost like a time limit on it.
Rick Barnes has been at Tennessee for 10 years.
Not as much pressure.
Not as much pressure. Okay.
Just real quick, I would say it depends, not to cavalier the question, but it depends on who you ask because it is the best job for some rising stars in the profession.
For Mark Pope.
Right. For others, no, I don't want that pressure cooker, so it just depends where you're at.
For me, I just look at it and they're going after Danny Hurley. Why would he leave? See, that's one where Kentucky's got 4 national titles since like 1958. UConn's got 6 since 1999. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no offense. Kentucky's a great job, can be a great job again. But to think that we are the premier job, I think that's UConn right now. And I would put North Carolina, Duke, and Kansas all above Kentucky at the moment. It's still a top 5 blue blood Mount Rushmore kind of job. But for them to think we'll go out and grab the coach off the national championship team, I thought was a little pie in the sky. remember this for when Rick Barnes retires. We're going to say the same stuff when people here want to go get Scott Drew and every other big name. All right, Will, thanks for being with us today. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me on.
When we come back, we're going to be talking with John Wilkerson from Lindsey Nelson Stadium. We still got Lady Vols. We still got the money Tennessee is spending on Rick Barnes and Kim Caldwell. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. Home invasions, porch pirates. There's always some awful story on the news about someone who didn't have a good enough security system to protect their home or their office. Don't let that be you. Call VFL JJ Surlis and the team at Safety Systems this week to discuss the security options for your home or your business. All right. Always, I love these segments where we try technology, we try to make it work. It's hard to go all the way live to Lindsey Nelson Stadium, but right now we have John Wilkerson, the voice of the baseball Vols from 99.1 The Sports Animal. There he is. John, thanks for joining us today. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about last night's game first. The Vols wrap up the series win against LSU. Drew Beam pitches last night. It was a pitcher's duel. The Volunteers win it. Tell us about last night's action.
Stadium was to first of all, again, Todd helped back in the swing of things, and you had a record crowd. While Tennessee was no hit for the first 6 innings, the Volunteers rally for the home victory, and so it was just a fantastic way to clinch the weekend. So you had a record crowd, you had Todd Helton, even Chris Burke, Tennessee legend, in the stands, or I should say in the booth, calling the television act. But it was just an incredible way for Tennessee to notch another win against LSU.
Okay, let me get you to tilt that just a little bit more, John, the opposite direction if you can. But the thing I wanted to ask you next was Tennessee's 29-6 overall, 9-5 in the SEC. How do you feel about this team right now? With about a month to go in the season, in terms of we need it tilted a little bit more, a little less chin room there, or a little more. There we go. That's perfect. For folks at home, this is how you do TV. I wanted to ask you, though, how do you feel about this team? What are the positives going into the last month of the season? And is there anything that's still a concern for you?
Well, I do think that you just want to see the team get healthy. I mean, Billy Amick just came back from missing a couple of weeks, and he came back with a vengeance. He's hit home runs in both games. A.J. Russell, who was the first Friday starter for Tennessee, weeks 1 and 2, he's been trying to get back on the field to be a part of the rotation. So I just think team health would be job one. And then I do think just a little more consistency in terms of start to finish. Tennessee doesn't have a set hierarchy when it comes to who comes in after the starting pitching. But there's a lot to like about this team. You look at the offense, which is firing great guns. And I think you just have a couple of things that you can polish. Perhaps defense might be a part of that as well. Every now and then there might be a fly in the ointment. But again, this is a pretty sound team across the board.
All right, very good. One last thing. You got a game coming up today at 3 o'clock, LSU in town. Tell us what the matchup is today. What do you expect from the Volunteers?
Well, I'll be surprised if LSU doesn't fight to the finish. Goofy stat, this is the first time since 1977 that LSU has lost 5 straight SEC series. And so Tennessee's won a school record 7 straight at home against the Bayou Bengals. They'd love to finish off with a sweep. But with this team that won the College World Series last year, you think, LSU is not going to go down without a fight. Xander Seacrest gets the ball for the Big Orange. He's really made a home for himself when it comes to being the Sunday starter. So can't wait to see him toe the rubber for the Big Orange. Should be another great crowd in what has already been a record-setting weekend.
John, I appreciate you joining us. We put this together. If it looks thrown together, it's because it came together about 11:15 last night. So, John, thank you very much. I appreciate it, buddy. And we'll see you in the weeks ahead here on the show, but we'll make it look better on our end. Thank you very much, and have a good call today.
Sure do appreciate it, John. 2:45 the airtime, 3 o'clock the first pitch on the Vol Network.
Very good. You can hear Vol Network, and of course that means the Sports Animal and those guys will have that for you. Thanks to John Wilkerson, who always classes up the joint when he's here. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Kim Caldwell, that hire. We saw it coming down the road, the reaction, and how the reaction flipped on a press conference. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. And today through April 21st, that's next Sunday, so all week, it's the Games and Things Spring Clearance Sale. All kinds of deals from East Tennessee's best selection of pool tables, best selection of home theater seats, best selection of kitchen and bar stools, on down the line. They got it all on sale right now. Now through next Sunday, the Spring Clearance Sale at Games and Things. Get down there to their showroom. This is the perfect time to check out that great showroom I'm always telling you about this week at the corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road. Games and Things. Okay, big school like Tennessee says, that's not a good enough resume. I will tell you this, when I look at Josh Heupel, Lance Leipold, and Nate Oates, if Danny White comes back with Kim Caldwell, and I say 7 years at Glenville State, 1 year at Marshall, he's got the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving it to him.
Yeah,
because I think he has shown he can spot it. I will also think one thing that we haven't talked about, he's got a brother who's a coach. He's got a father who was an AD for a long time. He's got tentacles all over the place. I think he's probably got a lot of good contacts out there.
Yeah.
Danny White has a terrific track record of hiring coaches.
I don't remember him missing. That's the thing. From Buffalo to UCF to here,
Yeah.
I don't remember him missing.
All right, that was last Sunday, and we got it right on Kim Caldwell. It was her, and we also got it right on the initial reaction, which was not great. A lot of people were like, she's 7 years at Glenville State. She's mid-30s. She doesn't have the track record. You didn't spend the money. You didn't go after anybody big. Then came the press conference, and it is awfully hard to lose a press conference because fans want to. They can scream, they can get mad, but as soon as they see somebody up there, they want to pull for that person. And once again, we saw a hire that was initially met with what? Turn into, yeah, she's the one, with a simple press conference. Jimmy, the idea of winning the press conference doesn't mean much to me, but it does mean something when it comes to fans.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think winning the press conference is overrated. You want to win ball games. But what happens is if you win a press conference, I think, then the fans are more open to, okay, well, let's give this person a chance. We'll show up to the games. We won't just put our thumbs down and say, no, we can't support this. So I think that's a part of it when you win a press conference. And I think she did a really good job at the press conference. Probably no better job than the way she answered John Adams' question, which
That was the one that won it for her.
Yeah, I think it did about, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think my style would work.
And I didn't think it was that tough of a question.
No, I
I
didn't
saw
either.
there were people, I was listening to Josh and Swain on the radio, and apparently texts were coming in, boy, she dunked on John Adams. He was trying to bully her. It's like he just asked a simple question. But people know John, and anytime you can go at the media, especially John, people like that. So that was kind of a mic drop moment for Kim Caldwell. It was a very short press conference. I was surprised by the lack of questions. I was surprised that no one asked, with your background, do you feel the need to bring in someone with SEC experience to put on your bench? I thought that question was going. But there were very few questions. I thought she was fine. I didn't think it was the greatest press conference ever, but apparently most people did. I thought it was just kind of standard answers. Your thoughts on her press conference, how she won people over, and what's been the response this week? Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. What did you find on Sports Talk?
Yeah, I think, I don't know how many people thought it was the greatest press conference ever. I know it's not what you're saying, everybody was saying, but I do think she's likable, and she did a really good job in there. And I watched some of her press conferences at Marshall just to kind of get a feel for her, and they're very similar in her communication style. What's interesting about the answer to the John Adams question is people took note as much about the answer, maybe even more so, was the stare back.
Yes, I saw
afterwards.
that. That was all over social media and the message boards. Oh, did you see that stare?
Right.
Okay.
John's voice does not have bully in it, by the way.
Yeah. I just think some of that stuff's just kind of. I mean, there aren't many coaches here who I think have lost the press conference with the fan base. I looked at Lane Kiffin. I talked to people afterwards. I'm like, boy, that was awful. And they're like, well, he was great. What are you talking about? He was shuffling his feet and stammering the whole time and kind of nervous and stalking back and forth.
He looked uncomfortable, I
Yes,
thought.
and yet people loved it.
Yeah.
We talked about Jeremy Pruitt. You thought he lost that press conference, but people went out and started making T-shirts that said, all right. They didn't care that he couldn't speak English. They wanted that. I just think once you see your person up there, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
It's very hard to lose a press conference. Is Pruitt the closest you've seen to losing one with the fans, in your opinion?
Yeah, because in the circles that I travel, they really struggle with this lack of command of the English language. That was the one I heard the most from Pruitt about that. But yeah, it is hard to lose one, but the fan base wants to buy into whoever you have hired. And I agree with something you said on that clip. Danny White has earned the right to not necessarily be second guessed on his hire. He has hired some great coaches. Yeah. Now, he's hired up and comers most anywhere he's been. That includes Josh Heupel. This is the 4th hire he has made at Tennessee. 2 of them are still yet to be determined. Josh Heupel's done a really good job, and now you've got Kim Caldwell coming in. The key to her is going to be recruiting, though. That roster right now would struggle unless she makes some really good additions.
Let's talk about let's take off on the recruiting a little bit. Does she have a need to bring in? I mentioned it. Does she have a need to bring in an SEC, an experienced big program coach to put on that bench?
I would.
I would too.
I would too. Yep.
Do we think that she feels that way? Do we have any idea?
We've
seen her for a week. How much have you read into what she's doing behind the eyes?
But I think, you're right. That question should have been asked of her. But I think these were conversations that she's probably already had with Danny White. Because when you hire a coach, you always want to know what your plan is, what your vision is, how you're going to get there.
But we're not in that meeting, so we're having to speculate and fill a Sunday talk show.
This is true. And I'm saying I would do that. Does she know to do that? I would think she's sharp enough at this point to know to do that.
There was a lot of talk as Kelly Harper exited that, the problem with recruiting has been NIL issues. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's false. I will just say that I think if you look across the country now, any coach that doesn't recruit well, that camp will say, well, we didn't get the NIL help. I just think that's going to be the standard crutch, whether it's legitimate or a crutch. So it will be interesting to see how much NIL dollars go toward Lady Vol recruiting moving forward. Thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm kind of in the same camp with you. I don't know if that's hurt them in recruiting, the Boost Her Club. I don't know if that's been a factor. I know that even before that, Kelly Harper was not getting a lot of elite high school players. Mm-hmm. And the other part of that is she was relying on transfers, which in the last couple of years she didn't do very well at all in high school. She got some good transfers in here. She actually had, I thought, a pretty good roster last year, and they underachieved. Yeah. So I can't imagine Tennessee in women's basketball not having enough money to compete with other schools with NIL money.
Well, and some of it, to Jimmy's point, is where's the money going? Because some of the theories of the NIL holding them back was, hey, they're not allotting enough for high school players, and there is elite high school players that went elsewhere that are part of the tournament, but it's more so for the portal. So that they were going to be better at now just having enough money for high school players and for the portal. So I don't know if that's the case, but that fits in with the recruiting that was taking place under Harper.
It does. Is that a coincidence that it took that it meshed? I mean, again, I'm always suspicious of these things whenever a coach leaves and says, well, the reason was X, and that starts floating around. Harper didn't say that, but somebody was saying that. Right. And I just wonder how is that kind of an excuse. So we'll see. We'll soon find out. And the other thing is, whenever you talk about not having enough NIL dollars, well, that goes back to you. I mean, that's the thing. Everybody wanted to be able to pay players, so pay them. I'm not raising money like some people are for the collectives, but that's if you want to help the teams, that's how you do it.
I do wonder also that Kelly Harper was kind of treading water, and maybe some of the boosters said, I don't support this. Yeah. So I don't think some of them helped because they didn't think Harper could get Tennessee where it wanted to go.
Well, it's interesting that the story came out. Who knows if this one's true? This one may be the other thing. But at Kentucky, after the Mark Pope hire was announced, everybody freaked out and was negative, but then they let it leak out that they had like $4 million promised in NIL dollars to support him. Okay, well, I didn't hear that kind of announcement here about people throwing money. Now we got Kim Caldwell. Here's $2 million to play with recruits. We'll see. But that's what Kentucky did. Who knows if that's actual real money or just part of the spin. All right, when we come back, let's talk about what the school is spending, not NIL stuff. But let's talk about what UT is spending on coaches. You seen the bonus money that Rick Barnes brought in this year? Did you see the clause that they put in Kim Caldwell's contract? Let's talk about merit-based pay when we come back. We're back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Paper Be Gone. Tomorrow is tax day, folks. That means you can get rid of some of your older files and papers. Now, be sure to ask your tax person just how far back you have to go to get rid of things. But if you're going to get rid of things, call Paper Be Gone. They shred, they remove, they can destroy old hard drives. They do it all in an environmentally friendly way. Everybody's trying to steal identities. Everybody's trying to get a hold of bank account numbers. tear them up the right way, get them disposed of the right way, paperbegone.com is where you can learn more about this terrific company. And, of course, I trust them. I told you about Junk Be Gone earlier. I've used Junk Be Gone for years. These are the same fine folks, same fine family behind this local business. Paper Be Gone. All right, let's show you the results of the poll. There we go. 70% of you, so 51%, the vast majority, say the exactly 9 is the answer. They will win exactly 9 games this fall, 9-3. Okay. Then you get 29%, that's number 2. They say 10 or more wins. So throw that together, and that's right at 80%. That's wow. 80% say 9 or more, basically.
Well, and John, just to translate this even further, because we get this all the time on radio, exactly 9 means 10. Because your question was regular season, and the bowl win is always
I get what
assumed.
you're saying. Yeah, it's
And so 10 or more means 11 counting the bowl game.
Gotcha. So there you go. 80% of you think they're going to win 9 or more. That's a little bit of a high percentage in my book. I mean, that's rookie quarterback coming in there. I don't know. That 9 seems like it's a fair expectation. It's probably where I will go. 80% of people saying that or better. I think the expectations could be a little too high.
That's confidence in Nico. It's confidence in Tennessee after they beat Iowa 35-0 in the Citrus Bowl. I think there's a carryover effect of that.
I also don't think, that there's not a feeling that the schedule is overwhelming or is going to have cause you to lose games that you're not supposed to.
Yeah, because NC State and Oklahoma are going to be a breeze in September.
Of course, look at the names.
It's a joke. All right, I want to ask you guys, Rick Barnes going to be earning at least, according to a story on Yahoo, at least $1.6 million in bonuses following the Vols SEC championship and their run to the Elite Eight. They also finished ranked in the top 5 in the country. It's the first time they ever did that in the program's history. I wonder if there's a clause in his contract. No offense, I didn't go digging through his contract. I just took Yahoo's word for it. I don't know if he had another clause in there for a top 5 finisher. He could be over $1.6 million. But $1.6 million in bonuses to Rick Barnes. National championship winning coach Dan Hurley just got $1.8 million in bonuses. So $1.6 million to Rick Barnes. Then Kim Caldwell was hired, and they put a clause in her contract that I absolutely love. Win a national championship, we will make you the highest paid coach in women's basketball. Now, they have to hope that someone doesn't go insane and offer $1 billion to a women's coach.
Like Don Staley.
Exactly. But that is merit-based pay, and I love that. I think that's great, especially for someone who's making a big jump up, so you're not paying through the nose off the top, but you're saying, you get it done here, we'll pay up. Jimmy and Vince, there has been a long cloud over this program where people say, well, they don't spend on basketball. And it started to go away when they had to pay Rick Barnes to stay and keep him from UCLA. I don't think it was fully buried, though. This should bury it. In that you're seeing if you win titles, if you win championships, if you go far in the tournament, Tennessee's going to pay as good as anybody in the country right now. I mean, Barnes is getting bonuses as good as Danny Hurley. She's getting a contract that says we'll make you the number 1. I think this, if I'm a Tennessee fan, I'm loving this.
Yeah, investing in facilities too. Baseball with the renovations of Lindsey Nelson. For those that thought that it was just football and that's it that they cared about, that should show you that they see the profit and the benefit of it. And there's other renovations and things they're doing on campus. So I do like that Kim Caldwell contract, and it does answer to she doesn't have a ton of experience. Well, we see the vision, and we're willing to put our money behind it if we're right about it.
Got about 20 seconds.
I'm in favor of the merit-based contract, but I will say this. The more a coach makes with his peers, I think the less the bonus should be. Because I'm paying you to do these things if I'm giving you top 5 money in the country.
So you don't want Rick Barnes making that money. That's where we're closing this show.
Give it
there
back.
we go. Thanks to these guys. Thanks to Will Overstreet. Thanks to John Wilkerson. We'll clean that up, make that look better the next time he's on here. Thank you for watching. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making this possible. See you next week right back here.